I used to think Christmas was sacred, wrapped in warmth, forgiveness, and family. But last December, over honeyed ham and cranberry wine, my mother looked straight at my adopted daughter and said, "You're not truly one of us." The laughter died. My heart cracked. I realized I'd spent years financing people who would destroy my child's dignity without blinking. That night, I didn't just walk out of their house. I walked out with the deed they never thought I'd claim. If you think betrayal comes from enemies, think again. Sometimes it's disguised as a smile, passed down through generations, and served with dessert. It was 2:07 a.m. when my phone lit up. Mom blinked on the screen, and before I even answered, my stomach tightened. She never called unless something was wrong or something was needed. I answered anyway, like I always did. Her voice trembled. "Your father collapsed," she whispered. "He's in the hospital. We need help. They won't do the scan until we pay. Claire, please, just $2,000. That number, it always came in even amounts, always urgent. I didn't ask which hospital or what kind of scan. I didn't ask why she hadn't called an ambulance or why my brother, who lived 15 minutes away, wasn't the one she called. I just said, "I'll transfer it now." And I did. If your mother called you in the middle of the night, voice cracking like a scared child, would you say no? I was a single mom. I'd been on the edge of bankruptcy twice, once sleeping on a mattress in a roach-infested apartment. Holding my daughter through nights, she coughed herself raw. But that night, I wired over the last of my savings with barely a second thought. That's what I'd been trained to do. Growing up, I wasn't abused, not in the way that leaves bruises. I was praised. I was the good one, the peacemaker. My brother was loud and reckless, always in trouble. But me, I was the child who cleaned her plate, who apologized first, who learned early that being loved meant being useful. When my parents divorced, I was the one who comforted Mom at midnight, holding her hand while she wept about how your father never loved me. I was 10. When Dad lost his job, I gave up a college internship to come home and help him run errands. I was 21. When my brother got into a car accident he caused, I used my tax return to help fix the other person's bumper. No one thanked me. I never expected them to. And that's the thing. They called it being part of the family, but really, it was servitude. Nicely packaged, guilt-wrapped, signed with love. I never thought to question it until 3 days after that 2 a.m. call, when I got a notification from my pharmacy app. Dad had picked up his blood pressure meds 3 days ago. The day before the emergency, I froze. I double-checked. The hospital he was supposedly in, I called. No patient by that name. My mother had lied. I sat on the floor of my tiny kitchen, my daughter still asleep, in the next room, and stared at my phone. I wasn't angry yet. I was stunned, confused. My mind flipped through excuses like flashcards. Maybe she'd gotten dates mixed up. Maybe it was another hospital. Maybe, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't the first time. There was that time they needed help with car repairs, and a month later, I saw photos of them on a cruise. There was the time I sent $500 for rent, and my brother used it to buy a new gaming console. Each time I told myself it was love, that they were just bad with money. That family meant helping no matter what. But a question I'd buried for years rose like bile. Who was helping me? Emotion crept up behind the confusion, catching me off guard. Not rage yet, just sadness, exhaustion, memory. I remembered one Christmas years ago. I had bought everyone gifts with my first post-divorce paycheck. A scarf for Mom, a watch for Dad, a little music box for my niece. I wrapped each one with care, wrote cards. That night, my mom hugged me tightly. "No one loves me like you do," she said. I'd clung to that moment like a lighthouse, proof that I mattered, that all the giving, the bending, the silence, it meant something. And then, just a week ago, a friend from college texted me. "Hey Claire, weird question. Did your mom mean to CC me? She sent an email trashing someone. Pretty sure it was you." She attached the screenshot. It was about me, full of venom. "She's ungrateful," it said. "Thinks she's better than the rest of us just because she has a kid and a job. Always flaunting her pity stories. Total drama queen." I couldn't breathe. I read it again and again. The same woman who called me her rock had just gutted me in front of a stranger. A stranger I hadn't seen since graduation. Suddenly, every moment of sacrifice replayed in reverse. Every wire transfer, every babysitting shift I skipped to send money. Every time I told my daughter, "We can't afford that this month," while my family posted steak dinners online. And I thought, 12 years of giving, of bending, of believing I was the favorite because I was good. But maybe I was the favorite because I never asked for anything. Maybe love in our house was conditional, transactional, calculated. And maybe I had been paying the wrong people with the wrong currency for a debt I never owed. The snow that morning looked like something out of a postcard, clean, weightless, unearned. I watched it fall while brushing my daughter's hair, trying to calm the tightness in my chest. She was excited, holding the gift she'd picked out herself for Grandma, a lavender candle. "It smells like calm," she said. I hadn't been home for Christmas in years. Not since the divorce, not since the guilt trips turned into silent treatments. But after that awful night, and everything I'd uncovered, part of me wanted to believe things could still be different. That maybe, just maybe, showing up with open arms might reopen something in them too. So I packed carefully wrapped presents, nothing extravagant, but thoughtful. A wool scarf for Mom, a novel for Dad, socks with fishing puns for my brother, a sketchbook for my niece. I even baked gingerbread cookies, the same kind Mom used to make when I was little. We arrived just before noon. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine. The laughter, the crackling fireplace, the background hum of Mariah Carey. It all felt almost real, as if nostalgia could scrub the rot. Everyone greeted us with exaggerated warmth. "Claire, oh my God, you look amazing. Is this little Ivy? Look at how big she's gotten." My mother hugged me like nothing had happened. "You came, finally." She looked down at Ivy. "She's taller than I expected." Still, I smiled. I wanted peace. I wanted Ivy to feel like she belonged. For just one day. Lunch was served around 1:30. The table was crowded, noisy, filled with platters and forced pleasantries. Ivy sat beside me, carefully slicing her ham. I noticed how quiet she'd become. I tried to breathe through it. I made small talk. I laughed when I was supposed to. Even when my brother made a joke about Claire the Bleeding Heart, I let it slide. Ivy squeezed my hand under the table. Then dessert. Pecan pie, whipped cream, eggnog. My mother raised a glass and said, "To family." Everyone echoed, "To family." And then, as if the room hadn't already stopped pretending, she turned to Ivy and said, "Even if you're not truly one of us, you're still welcome at our table." The silence hit like a dropped plate. Ivy looked up at me, eyes wide, Her fork froze midair. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My father cleared his throat, uncomfortable. My brother snorted. "Mom," he muttered, "don't start." But she kept smiling, sipping her wine. "I'm just saying, blood is blood. She's lovely, but let's not pretend." The burn started in my throat first, then my chest, my ears. I stood up without realizing it, the chair scraping back loud against the tile. Ivy stared at her plate. Her little shoulders had gone rigid. I should have screamed. I should have flipped the table. But all I said was, "We're leaving." My mother blinked. "Don't be dramatic." I picked up our coats. Ivy clutched the lavender candle to her chest, her lip trembling. No one stopped us. No one followed. We walked to the car in silence, snow sticking to Ivy's boots, her curls, her lashes. She looked like a statue, a heartbreak in motion. Back at the house, my old house, I unlocked the side door, the one that used to stick in winter. I hadn't planned to come back here, not like this. But my hands moved on instinct. The room hadn't changed. Same yellowing wallpaper, same shelf of dusty figurines. I went to the closet, pulled down the old box where Mom kept birthday cards and passports. I was looking for the teddy bear I gave Ivy when she turned 2. Something to take, something to hold on to, something real. Instead, I found the folder. Inside, the deed, or part of it. 10 years ago, I'd helped my parents refinance after a foreclosure scare. They'd needed me to co-sign. I never asked for anything in return, never even saw the papers again. But there it was, my name, on the dotted line, legal, binding. Claire Renee Halloway, 50% owner of the house I just got pushed out of. I stared at it like it was a stranger, like it was a ticket I'd forgotten I bought, one I never planned to use. The door creaked. Ivy stood there holding the bear, the same one, worn now with a torn ear. "It was still here," she whispered. I nodded, quietly folding the document, slipped it into my coat. "Let's go." As we drove away, Ivy curled into the passenger seat, silent. Snow tapped at the windshield like questions I didn't want to answer. She was asleep before we hit the highway, her fingers curled around the bear's arm. I didn't cry, not this time. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. I sat stiff in the leather chair, holding the document I'd taken from my mother's house, like it might combust. The receptionist had offered me coffee, but I declined. I needed my hands steady. Across from me sat Marla Jensen, sharp eyes, even sharper voice. She didn't smile much, which I appreciated. I wasn't here for comfort. She scanned the papers. "Claire," she said slowly, "this isn't symbolic, it's real. You're listed as a co-owner, equal rights. That house is half yours." I nodded, my pulse strangely calm. "Can they fight it?" "They can try," she said, "but they'd lose." I didn't feel victorious. I felt like someone had handed me the blueprint to a cage I'd lived in for years, and the key I'd forgotten I forged myself. That night, after Ivy went to sleep, I opened my laptop and pulled up 12 years of emails, bank transfers, receipts. I hadn't thought to archive them for any reason other than habit, but now the pattern became sickeningly clear. Emergency funds, $500 for car repairs, wait $200 for rent help, another $700 for back taxes, always urgent, always last minute. I'd labeled them family in my banking app. The total was over $34,000. There were emails too. My mother, "Honey, we just need a little help this month." My brother, "I'll pay you back Friday, swear." None of it ever returned. I printed everything, stacked it, numbered it, created folders labeled chronology, abuse pattern, ownership proof. Marla called the next day. I did some digging, she said. Property records show another transfer was filed just last week. I froze. What kind of transfer? Your mother deeded the adjoining lot, part of the backyard, to your brother. It's already been recorded. Quiet filing, no notice to you. The folder in my lap shook. They knew, I whispered. They knew I might come for what's mine. They're locking down assets, she confirmed. You need to act fast. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just wrote one word in black ink at the top of my legal pad. War. But wars aren't fought alone. I called a financial advisor I'd met through work, who agreed to review everything I'd compiled. He was blunt. You've been exploited, Claire, but you've got a solid paper trail. That's power. Next came a therapist for Ivy, a gentle woman named Karina, who wore soft scarves and asked questions I didn't know how to answer. Do you think Ivy knows what happened at Christmas? She was there, I said. She heard every word. Yes, but does she know what it means? That she's not the problem? I swallowed. I'm working on that. We met twice a week. Ivy didn't talk much at first, just colored pictures. But then one day she drew a house on fire and labeled it Nana's. I didn't correct her. In our tiny rental apartment, bare walls, 2 mismatched chairs, I started building something new. Not a life yet, but a defense line. One evening, Ivy and I baked cookies. She wore an oversized apron that nearly swallowed her whole. I let her dump in too much vanilla. She giggled. When we sat on the floor eating warm crumbs, she looked up at me and said, Are we still a family? I put my arm around her. Yes, baby, we are. A better one. And I promise, from now on, I'll always be on your side, no matter what. She smiled, small but real. It felt like sunlight in the dark. I wanted to stay there. Freeze that moment. Let it heal us. But healing doesn't make the world kinder. 3 days later, I got a message from a friend of a friend. Hey Claire, weird story. Your mom's been saying stuff about you online. Thought you should know. Attached was a screenshot of a post in a local Facebook group. My mother's name, plain as day. The text read, My daughter's been acting unstable. We're worried about her mental health. She's making wild claims, threatening to take our home. If you know a good counselor, please reach out. This isn't like her. We're just trying to protect her daughter. There were comments, dozens, people offering support, others asking for my number. One woman said she knew a custody lawyer. They were painting me as unstable, dangerous, mentally unfit. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding. They weren't just protecting themselves anymore. They were trying to destroy me. And I knew then, I wasn't just fighting for a house or a bank statement. I was fighting for the right to exist without being rewritten. The invitation arrived on cream cardstock, edged in gold. You are cordially invited to celebrate Margaret Halloway's 65th birthday. I almost laughed, cordially, as if there hadn't been war declared just weeks ago. But I didn't throw it away. I pinned it to the fridge and stared at it for days. Then I called Marla. Should I go? You want closure or impact? She asked. Both, I said. So we planned. On the day of the party, I dressed in charcoal gray. Not mourning, not celebration. Ivy stayed with Karina. She knew I had something important to do, though I didn't give her details. Just kissed her forehead and said, For us. The venue was a country club with high ceilings and low morals. I walked in with a leather folder under my arm and steel in my spine. The chatter stopped when they saw me. I hadn't been invited in years, not really. My mother stood near a tower of pink roses, laughing at some joke I wasn't meant to hear. Her smile faltered when she noticed me. I smiled back. "Claire," she said, tone sugary and cold. "This is a surprise." "I know," I replied, voice calm, "but I couldn't miss the celebration." She blinked, calculating. "Well, make yourself comfortable." I didn't sit. I waited. I let the room settle again. Conversations resume, drinks pour, cameras flash. Then, just as dessert was about to be served, I stepped forward. "I'd like to make a toast." The room hushed. All eyes turned. I pulled the folder open, held up the deed. "This," I said, "is a certified copy of the ownership agreement for 721 Sycamore Lane. You might know it as Mom and Dad's house. What you may not know is I legally own half of it." A collective inhale. "And while we're celebrating milestones, I thought I'd share a few more. Like the $34,000 I sent this family over 12 years, the countless emergencies I covered, the time I co-signed to save the house, only to be told last month that my daughter isn't truly family." Someone dropped a fork. My mother stepped forward, eyes hard. "What is this, some kind of performance?" "No," I said. "It's a correction." She laughed. "You've always had a flair for drama." I clicked my phone. Her voice played aloud. "You owe me your whole life, Claire. We raised you, fed you. You'd have nothing without us." Silence. And then, from the back of the room, a voice broke through. "She's not lying." Everyone turned. It was Aunt Renee, my mother's older sister, a woman who'd survived 3 divorces and cancer. She stood with a cane in one hand, a wine glass in the other. "I was there when Claire signed the refinance papers," she said. "I told Margaret not to hide the documents, but she did. She always does." My mother's face paled. Renee looked at me and nodded. It's about time someone said the truth. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. I left the party before the cake was cut. The fallout was swift. 3 days later, I got notice that my parents had hired a lawyer. They were contesting the deed, calling it coercion. But Marla was faster and smarter and ruthless when she had to be. I launched the blog a week after that. The Heir with No Seat. I wrote everything, not out of vengeance, but to reclaim the narrative. The post went viral, not because it was shocking, but because it was familiar. Too many people had been the family ATM, the emotional punching bag, the scapegoat. I wasn't alone. The most surprising message came from a cousin I hadn't seen since childhood. "I read your post," she wrote. "You're not the only one. Aunt Margaret did the same thing to my mom. Gaslighted her, cut her out of the will, made her feel insane." She added, "Let me know if you ever want backup. Some stories need a chorus." And then more came. Quiet, private messages from relatives I barely remembered. Stories of money gone missing, secrets kept, alliances broken. Apparently, the rot ran deeper than I knew. Then, yesterday, Marla forwarded me an official notice. The property, 721 Sycamore Lane, was scheduled for legal partition, which meant it was going to be split. Physically, financially, publicly. Half of it belonged to me, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The paperwork arrived by courier in a thick manila envelope. Ivy was watching cartoons on the couch when I signed it. No dramatic music, no thunderclap outside the window, just a scratch of pen on paper and the quiet breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Half the house was mine, officially and legally. Within a week, I'd listed it for sale. My parents tried to delay, more calls, more lawyers, but they had no case. The contract was clear, and the court was tired of their noise. I sold my share to a local developer. He planned to split the lot and build duplexes, cold, clean efficiency, the kind of move my parents would call heartless. But what was heart when it had been weaponized for so long? The wire transfer landed in my account on a Thursday morning. I stared at the number on the screen for a long time. It didn't feel like revenge. It didn't even feel like closure. It felt empty, quiet, but real. I used part of it to pay off my debts, put the rest into a trust for Ivy, opened a small savings account in my name, just mine. No one else had access. That alone felt like a revolution. Word got around fast. Family gatherings thinned. Birthdays passed without group messages. I heard that Mom stopped hosting Thanksgiving, that people stopped asking her to explain. No one wanted to sit beside a woman whose secrets had faces now. Names, screenshots. My brother lost his job 2 months later. Apparently, someone had sent a link to my blog post to his HR department. They investigated his loan habits. It didn't end well for him. I didn't orchestrate it, but I didn't lose sleep over it either. Still, I didn't celebrate. There were no champagne toasts, no I told you so texts. Just a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I drove past the house for the last time. I parked across the street. The siding had faded. The gutters were pulling loose. It looked smaller than I remembered. I walked to the edge of the lawn and placed a hand on the brick wall near the porch. Once, that wall had been where I sat during summer evenings, sipping lemonade while my dad told old jokes. Where Ivy had taken her first steps, where I once believed love was unconditional. Now it was just cold stone, a memory that no longer asked to be kept. Back at the apartment, Ivy was in the garden box we'd built from scrap wood, planting baby carrots. Her fingers were dirt-covered and determined. "Do you think they'll grow fast?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but the good ones take time." She smiled and went back to work. I spent the next weeks in stillness. No blog posts, no emails. I cooked more. We painted our living room walls yellow. Ivy started ballet lessons. I watched every practice, clapped for every stumble. She beamed like the stage was hers alone. One evening, we sat side by side, journaling. Ivy's entry was about a squirrel she'd named Captain Crumb. Mine started with a sentence I never thought I'd write. "I feel okay today." That was when the email came. A woman named Lydia, senior acquisitions editor at a small publishing house. "I read your blog," she wrote. "Not just the main post, everything. The way you wrote about love and betrayal, about survival without bitterness. It deserves a wider audience." She wanted to talk about a book deal. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure if I was ready to tell the story again. But then I thought of Ivy and the way her eyes had lit up when I told her we were planting truth in our garden, not just vegetables. Maybe truth belonged outside the garden too. That weekend, she had her first recital. She wore a light blue leotard with tiny sequins that caught the light just right. I sat in the second row, heart pounding like it was my own debut. When the music started, she moved with grace and something else, something stronger. She wasn't performing. She was claiming space. When the routine ended, the room erupted in applause. But I stayed still for a moment, hands quiet in my lap. She looked for me in the crowd, found me, smiled. And for the first time in years, I felt weightless, not because I had won, but because I was finally done fighting. The first time I let my phone ring without answering, it was a Saturday morning. The screen flashed Mom, and I just watched it buzz. I didn't block her. I didn't yell. I simply let it go to voicemail. No explanations, no apologies, just silence. That became my rule. No returning calls, no reading messages that started with guilt. I didn't owe anyone understanding, not anymore. I'd spent most of my life being available, ready, eager to soothe. But now I practiced the radical art of saying no. Not loud, not cruel, just firm, unmoving, like stone reshaped by fire. We moved to Portland that spring, a modest house near Forest Park, with a backyard full of moss and morning light. Ivy got the room with the big window. I took the one facing east, sunrise side. The quiet was jarring at first. No calls, no demands. Just birds and rain and the scent of pine. In that silence, I wrote. At first, it was scattered thoughts in a notebook, then chapters, then timelines, scenes I'd lived, memories I'd rewritten 100 times just to survive. Now I faced them head on. Not to relive, but to release. I titled the manuscript, The Day I Left with the Deed. Some days I cried while typing. Other days I laughed at things that used to make me flinch. But the words came, the truth, unvarnished. One morning, Ivy asked if she could read it. Someday, I said, when you're ready, and when you've written your own version. She nodded like she understood. We built rituals into our new life. Sunday pancakes, Wednesday library visits, evenings in the garden, where Ivy named every tomato plant like it was a pet. There were still moments, triggers I couldn't predict. A voicemail from an unknown number that made my throat tighten. A familiar perfume in the grocery store that turned my stomach. But those moments passed. I let them. I learned to sit in peace, without waiting for the peace to break. One day, while pulling weeds beside the roses, I thought, what if I'd always loved others the way I now loved myself? What if the fierce protection I gave Ivy had once been directed inward? It wasn't too late. Have you ever learned to love yourself the way a mother loves her child? Without condition, without performance? Because when you do, it rewires everything. The book deal came in the fall. Lydia called, voice breathless. It's going to print next quarter. Early buzz is insane. I didn't feel giddy. I felt grounded. The release was quiet but steady. It found readers, survivors, people who had lived entire lives under the weight of invisible debts and emotional blackmail. Emails poured in, messages, letters. One woman wrote, "You helped me walk away from a mother who made me hate myself for breathing." Another said, "I thought I was crazy until I saw your story. Now I know I'm just free." Lydia asked if I'd consider speaking engagements. I hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to become a voice, but then I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who kept trying to be enough for people who were never full. So I said yes. I started with support groups, then panels, then podcasts. I never rehearsed. I just told the truth, not the polished kind, the raw kind, the kind that still makes your voice crack sometimes. People called me brave. I didn't correct them. But in my heart, I knew I wasn't brave. I was just done hiding. Ivy grew, taller, bolder. She learned to say no without guilt, to ask questions when something didn't feel right. She made friends who respected her boundaries. She danced with fire in her bones. At her 12th birthday, she stood in front of her small party, cake crumbs on her lips, and said, "I'm proud of my mom. She's my real family." I didn't cry in front of everyone, but later, alone, I let it come. Not sadness, gratitude. We were safe, whole, unshaken. The last message I got from my mother was short: "You've made your point." I never replied. She wasn't wrong. I had made my point. But more importantly, I had made a life built on truth, on choice, on boundaries forged in fire and held with grace. I didn't lose my family. I just lost the people who pretended to be one.